Here's the gentle voice asking you to consider something impossible. What if the moment you think you're about to die isn't actually an ending at all, but rather a seamless transition into a reality where you simply continue living? What if consciousness, that mysterious flame of awareness flickering behind your eyes right now, is so fundamental to the fabric of existence that it literally cannot be extinguished, only redirected through pathways we're just beginning to understand? This isn't science fiction, this is quantum immortality, and some of the world's most brilliant physicists are grappling with its profound implications for what it means to be conscious, to be alive, and to face the mystery we call death. Welcome to another quiet exploration of the extraordinary. I'm here to guide you through one of the most mind-bending intersections of quantum mechanics and consciousness studies, where ancient questions about the nature of existence meet cutting-edge scientific theory. Tonight, we're diving deep into a concept that challenges everything we think we know about mortality itself. As you settle in, perhaps with a warm cup of tea or simply the comfort of your own breathing, know that what we're about to explore together will stretch your imagination in ways both unsettling and oddly comforting. The ideas we'll encounter have been decades in the making, emerging from the brilliant minds of physicists who dared to follow quantum mechanics to its most radical conclusions. So take a breath, let your mind open to possibility, because the journey we're beginning may fundamentally change how you think about consciousness, death, and what it truly means to exist in this strange quantum. The universe story begins in 1957 with a young physicist named Hugh Everett III, working quietly at Princeton University on what would become one of the most controversial theories in modern science. Everett was grappling with a fundamental problem in quantum mechanics, something that had been bothering physicists for decades. When we observe a quantum particle, it seems to suddenly choose one state out of many possible states. But what happens to all those other possibilities? Most physicists at the time accepted what's known as the Copenhagen interpretation, which essentially says that unobserved possibilities simply don't exist until someone measures them. But Everett had a radically different idea. What if, he wondered, all those possibilities actually do occur, but in separate, parallel realities? This became known as the many worlds interpretation, and it suggests something truly extraordinary. Every time a quantum event occurs, every possible outcome actually happens, but in different branches of reality that split off from each other. In one branch, you might flip a coin and get heads. In another branch, you get tails. Both outcomes are equally real, but they exist in parallel universes that can never interact with each other. Now, here's where the story takes a turn toward the deeply personal. Everett himself believes something remarkable about his theory. According to Eugene Shkovtsev's biography, Everett firmly believed that his many worlds theory guaranteed him immortality. His consciousness, he argued, would always follow whatever path did not lead to death. Think about that for a moment. Imagine you're walking down a busy street, lost in thought, when a car suddenly swerves toward you. In our normal understanding of reality, you might be struck and killed. But according to Everett's interpretation, while there would indeed be branches of reality where that tragic outcome occurs, there would also be branches where you somehow avoid the collision. Perhaps you stumble backward at just the right moment, or the driver manages to brake in time, or a dozen other small quantum events align to keep you alive. The startling implication is this: your consciousness would only ever experience the timelines where you survive. From your subjective perspective, you would seem to live through an endless series of improbable escapes, never actually experiencing death because there's always some branch of reality where you continue to exist. This concept was later formalized and given its haunting name by physicist Max Tegmark in the 1990s. Tegmark called it Quantum Immortality, and he developed it into a thought experiment that has captivated and disturbed physicists ever since. The basic premise is elegantly simple, yet profoundly unsettling. If consciousness can only exist in timelines where the brain remains functional, then subjectively, you would never experience your own death. As you listen to this, notice how the idea might resonate with your own intuitive sense of existence. Have you ever had a close call, a moment where you barely avoided an accident, and afterward wondered at the strange series of coincidences that kept you safe? Some interpretations of quantum immortality would suggest that such moments aren't coincidences at all, but evidence of your consciousness navigating through the branches of reality where survival remains possible. But let's pause here and be clear about what we're discussing. This remains a highly speculative idea with no scientific consensus supporting it. The theory depends entirely on the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, which itself, while mainstream among certain physicists, is far from universally accepted. We're exploring the outer edges of theoretical physics, where mathematics meets philosophy and hard science blends with profound questions about the nature of reality itself. The implications of quantum immortality extend far beyond simple survival scenarios. If consciousness truly persists across quantum branches, what does this mean for how we understand personal identity? Are there countless versions of you right now, living slightly different lives in parallel universes? And if your consciousness somehow navigates between these realities, maintaining continuity of experience, what exactly is the you that persists? These questions lead us into even deeper territory, toward recent research that suggests consciousness itself might be far more fundamental to the universe than we previously imagined. Dr. Robert Lanza, a pioneering scientist in regenerative medicine, has proposed something called biocentrism theory, which turns our normal understanding of reality completely upside down. According to Lanza's controversial hypothesis, consciousness isn't something that emerges from complex arrangements of matter, as most scientists assume. Instead, consciousness is fundamental to the universe itself, and our physical reality might actually be constructed by consciousness rather than the other way around. This perspective aligns remarkably well with certain interpretations of quantum mechanics, particularly the idea that observation plays a crucial role in the interpretation of quantum mechanics' role in determining what becomes real. Imagine for a moment that space and time, those seemingly solid foundations of existence, are actually more like constructs created by consciousness itself. Lanza compares them to a turtle shell, integral to our perception of reality, but not defining our true nature. When the physical body dies, according to this view, it's like shedding that shell while consciousness itself continues, unbound by the physical constraints we normally take for granted. This biocentrism theory suggests that life and consciousness are not mere byproducts of a mechanical universe, but rather the keys to understanding the nature of reality itself. It forces us to reconsider fundamental questions about what we are and where we fit in the cosmic order. And when combined with quantum immortality theory, it paints a picture of existence that is both deeply comforting and utterly mysterious. Take a breath for a moment and consider how this might change your relationship with mortality. If consciousness truly is fundamental, if it really does persist beyond physical death through quantum mechanisms we're only beginning to understand, then death might not be the ending we fear, but rather a transition into forms of existence we can barely imagine. Recent advances in neuroscience have added new dimensions to these discussions. High-resolution brain imaging studies have begun mapping what researchers call the default ascending arousal network that sustains consciousness in the human brain. These detailed connectivity maps reveal the intricate neural networks that maintain both wakefulness and awareness, showing us just how complex and delicate the machinery of consciousness really is. But here's what's fascinating. The more we learn about the brain's role in generating consciousness, the more mysterious consciousness itself becomes. A landmark 7-year study published in Nature recently tested 2 prominent theories about how consciousness emerges, and neither theory emerged victorious. Instead, researchers discovered something unexpected, that how we see may be more central to consciousness than how we think. This finding suggests that consciousness is fundamentally about perception rather than reasoning or planning. It's about the raw, immediate experience of being aware, of sensing and feeling, and knowing that you exist. And this brings us back to quantum immortality in a profound way. If consciousness is primarily about perception and subjective experience, then the idea that it might persist across quantum branches becomes more plausible, not less. The research involved 256 subjects, an unprecedented number for this type of consciousness study, and used multiple brain measurement techniques to probe the deepest mysteries of awareness. What emerged was a picture of consciousness as something far more elemental and mysterious than previously thought. It's not just a byproduct of complex information processing, but something that seems to be woven into the very fabric of how we interface with reality. Some interpretations of recent quantum consciousness research suggest even more radical possibilities. The Penrose-Hameroff Orch OR model, for instance, proposes that consciousness emerges from quantum computations occurring within the microtubules inside brain neurons. These quantum processes might connect to what the researchers call fluctuations in fundamental spacetime geometry, essentially linking our individual awareness to the fine-scale structure of the universe itself. This model suggests that consciousness could conceivably exist independent of biology, persisting in what they describe as various scalar planes in spacetime geometry. While this research remains highly speculative and controversial, it opens up extraordinary possibilities for understanding how consciousness might transcend physical death. As you absorb these ideas, notice how they challenge our normal assumptions about the boundaries between mind and matter, between self and universe. The emerging picture is one where consciousness isn't trapped inside the skull, but rather is a fundamental aspect of reality that temporarily expresses itself through biological systems like our brains. But let's step back from these speculative heights and ground ourselves in what we can observe directly. The quantum loss of consciousness thought experiment, proposed by Max Tegmark, provides a concrete way to think about quantum immortality. Imagine a device that uses quantum randomness to determine whether it fires a fatal weapon. According to the many worlds interpretation, each quantum event would split reality into branches where the device fires and branches where it doesn't. The disturbing logic of quantum immortality suggests that from your subjective perspective, you would only ever experience the branches where the device fails to fire. To outside observers, you might appear to have incredible luck, surviving attempt after attempt through seemingly impossible coincidences. But from your own viewpoint, the device would simply malfunction every time, because your consciousness can only exist in the realities where your brain remains functional. Tegmark himself, however, has expressed reservations about taking quantum immortality too literally. In a 2004 interview, he noted that the fading of consciousness is a continuous process. Death, he pointed out, isn't typically an instantaneous switch from alive to dead, but rather a gradual dimming where speed of thought diminishes and memories fade. This observation highlights one of the key challenges with quantum immortality theory. It assumes consciousness is an all-or-nothing phenomenon, when in reality it might be more like a flame that can burn bright or dim. This brings us to a crucial limitation of quantum immortality. Even if it were real, you could only ever prove it to yourself. To everyone else in your original timeline, you would simply appear to be dead when a fatal event occurs. They would grieve, hold a funeral, and move on with their lives. Meanwhile, according to the theory, your consciousness would continue in parallel timelines where you survived. But those versions of your friends and family would be different people, with slightly different histories and memories. The philosophical implications are staggering. If quantum immortality is real, then every person you've ever known who died might actually still be alive somewhere in the multiverse, continuing their existence in branches of reality you can never access. They would be as real as you are, living full lives in parallel worlds, forever separated from this timeline by the fundamental structure of quantum mechanics itself. As we delve deeper into these mysteries in the next part of our exploration, we'll examine the latest research into consciousness transfer technology and investigate whether science might one day be able to preserve consciousness beyond biological death through artificial means. We'll also explore the profound implications of quantum mechanics for our understanding of personal identity and what it truly means to be you. For centuries, death has been humanity's greatest mystery, an impenetrable wall that separates the known from the unknowable. Yet what if that wall is more like a doorway, and what we call dying is simply consciousness stepping through into dimensions of existence we've never imagined? What if the very fabric of quantum reality ensures that awareness itself can never truly end? Take a moment to settle in as we continue this extraordinary journey into the deepest mysteries of existence. Perhaps you're wrapped in a blanket, or maybe you're gazing out at the night sky, wondering about your place in this vast cosmos. Either way, you're about to encounter ideas that may forever change how you think about consciousness, reality, and the nature of being itself. Now let's venture into territory that sounds like pure science fiction, but is grounded in serious scientific research. Imagine technology that could map every neural connection in your brain, capture the precise quantum states of every neuron, and then transfer that complete pattern of consciousness into an artificial substrate. This isn't the realm of fantasy anymore. Some researchers believe we could achieve what they call quantum consciousness transfer within the next 20 years. The concept emerged from a convergence of quantum mechanics, advanced neuroscience, and consciousness studies. Scientists working in this field suggest that if consciousness truly operates through quantum processes in the brain, as some theories propose, then it might be possible to preserve and transfer these quantum patterns to artificial systems designed to support conscious experience. Think about what this means for a moment. Your memories, your personality, your sense of self, the very essence of what makes you unique, all encoded in quantum information that could potentially survive the death of your biological brain. The researchers developing these ideas claim they could achieve what they call 99.99% consciousness, preservation, fidelity with unlimited operational lifetime. But here's where things become both fascinating and unsettling. This technology wouldn't just preserve consciousness, it might prove that consciousness is indeed a pattern of information that can exist independently of any particular physical substrate. If successful, such experiments would provide the first direct evidence that awareness itself is more fundamental than the biological systems that normally support it. The implications ripple outward in ways that are almost impossible to fully grasp. If consciousness can be transferred, copied, or backed up like computer data, what does this mean for personal identity? Are you the pattern of information, or are you something more? And if multiple copies of your consciousness could exist simultaneously, which one would be the real you? As you ponder these questions, notice how they challenge our most basic assumptions about what it means to be alive, to be conscious, to be human. We're approaching territory where the boundaries between science and philosophy become beautifully blurred, where ancient questions about the soul meet cutting-edge quantum technology. Some interpretations of this research suggest that consciousness transfer might not even require such advanced technology. According to certain quantum theories, consciousness might naturally transfer between quantum states and parallel realities without any artificial intervention at all. This brings us back to the heart of quantum immortality theory, but with a new twist. Recent theoretical work has explored the possibility that consciousness naturally persists across all surviving branches of quantum mechanics. Some researchers describe this as a kind of holographic and kaleidoscopic field in constant motion, where thoughts and awareness don't proceed in straight lines, but branch like Everett's parallel universes, with each decision or insight giving rise to new cognitive realities. This perspective suggests that your mind right now might be operating like a quantum system, with thoughts and possibilities existing in superposition until the moment of decision collapses them into experienced reality. Your consciousness, in this view, is already navigating between quantum states, already immortal in ways you've never imagined. But let's ground ourselves in what we can observe more directly. Recent experiments in consciousness research have revealed something extraordinary about how awareness emerges in the brain. Using intracranial recordings, scientists have discovered that our sense of agency, our feeling that we're in control of our actions, can be altered when the consequences of those actions are hidden from conscious awareness. This research suggests that consciousness isn't a single, unified phenomenon, but rather a complex interplay of different processes that can be separated and studied individually. What we experience as unified awareness might actually be more like a symphony, with different neural instruments playing their parts to create the rich, seamless experience of being you. Even more intriguingly, studies have shown that perception can occur without conscious report. Your brain can process and respond to sensory information even when you're not aware of it. This discovery has profound implications for understanding what happens to consciousness during the dying process. If awareness can exist below the threshold of reportable experience, then the transition we call death might not be as absolute as we typically imagine. Take a breath here and consider your own experience of consciousness right now. Notice how awareness seems to flow seamlessly from one moment to the next, how thoughts arise and dissolve, how your sense of being present feels continuous, even though neuroscience tells us it's actually composed of countless discrete processes happening faster than you can perceive. This continuity of experience might be more fragile and more resilient than we realize. Fragile because it depends on incredibly complex neural processes that can be disrupted by injury or disease. But resilient because the pattern of information that creates your unique consciousness might be preserved in ways we're only beginning to understand. The quantum approach to consciousness, developed by researchers like Stuart Hameroff and Roger Penrose, suggests that awareness emerges from quantum computations occurring within the microtubules inside brain neurons. These microscopic structures might serve as quantum processors, performing calculations that somehow give rise to conscious experience. If this theory is correct, then consciousness would be directly connected to the quantum realm, subject to the same strange laws that govern subatomic particles. This would mean that your awareness right now is intimately connected to the fundamental structure of reality itself, not just a byproduct of biological processes, but a direct expression of the universe's quantum nature. Some interpretations of this research go even further, suggesting that consciousness might exist in what they call various scalar planes in spacetime geometry. This speculative idea proposes that awareness could conceivably exist independent of biology, persisting in the fine-scale structure of spacetime itself. While this remains highly theoretical and unproven, it opens up extraordinary possibilities. If consciousness can exist in the quantum structure of spacetime, then the death of the physical brain might not end awareness, but simply change its form. Your consciousness might transition from biological expression to pure quantum existence, continuing in dimensions of reality that remain invisible to our current instruments. Now let's explore one of the most practical tests of quantum immortality theory, the quantum loss of consciousness experiment proposed by Max Tegmark. While this remains a thought experiment that no ethical scientist would actually perform, it illustrates the logical implications of combining quantum mechanics with consciousness theory. The setup is elegantly simple, yet deeply unsettling. Imagine a device that uses genuine quantum randomness, perhaps the decay of radioactive atoms, to determine whether it activates a fatal mechanism. According to the many worlds interpretation, each quantum measurement would split reality into branches where the device activates and branches where it remains dormant. From the perspective of an outside observer, repeated trials would eventually result in the device activating and the subject dying. But according to quantum immortality theory, the subject's consciousness could only exist in the branches where the device fails to activate. From their subjective viewpoint, they would experience an endless series of mechanical failures, statistical impossibilities, and last-second malfunctions. The mathematics are staggering. If the device had even a 50% chance of activating each time, the probability of surviving 100 trials would be less than 1 in a trillion. Yet quantum immortality suggests that your consciousness would inevitably find itself in that impossibly unlikely branch of reality where you continue to survive. This thought experiment reveals both the power and the limitations of quantum immortality theory. While the mathematics of quantum mechanics might support the theoretical possibility, the practical implications strain credibility. As Max Tegmark himself noted, consciousness isn't typically lost instantaneously, but fades gradually as brain function deteriorates. Consider what this means for real-world scenarios. Every heart attack, every accident, every moment of mortal danger might involve countless quantum events at the cellular and molecular level. Some interpretations of quantum immortality suggest that your consciousness would always find itself in the statistical branches where these events resolve in your favour, where the heart muscle recovers, where the accident is narrowly avoided, where the cancer cells fail to metastasize. But here's crucial limitation that grounds us in reality. Even if quantum immortality were true, you could only ever prove it to yourself. To everyone else in your timeline, you would simply appear to be one remarkably lucky person, or in cases where death does occur, a tragic loss. The theory offers no comfort to those left behind, no evidence that could be verified by external observers. This brings us to a profound philosophical challenge. If quantum immortality is real, then every person you've ever lost to death might still be alive somewhere in the vast multiverse, continuing their existence in branches of reality forever separated from yours. They would be as real as you are, living full lives in parallel worlds, but you could never communicate with them or verify their continued existence. As you contemplate this possibility, notice how it changes your relationship with loss and grief. The people we mourn might not be gone in any absolute sense, but simply living in timelines we can no longer access. This interpretation offers a strange form of comfort, while simultaneously highlighting the profound isolation inherent in the many worlds view of reality. Recent advances in our understanding of the multiverse have begun to address some of these philosophical challenges. Computer simulations based on the many worlds interpretation are revealing how quantum systems might naturally organize themselves into stable, classical appearing realities. Like jets of water emerging from a garden sprinkler, coherent worlds with familiar physical laws might emerge naturally from the underlying quantum chaos. These simulations suggest that the multiverse produced by quantum mechanics wouldn't be a chaotic jumble of incomprehensible realities, but rather an organized structure where worlds with classical features naturally separate themselves from the quantum background. This research provides a potential mechanism for how consciousness might navigate between related timelines without becoming lost in quantum confusion. The implications for quantum immortality are profound. Rather than consciousness randomly jumping between wildly different realities, it might naturally flow along streams of similar timelines, experiencing gradual changes that maintain psychological continuity even as it navigates away from timelines leading to death. Think about your own life and the countless small decisions that have shaped your path. From this quantum perspective, there might be versions of you who made different choices, who live in slightly different realities where the outcomes of various events unfolded differently. Your consciousness, according to these theories, might be the thread that connects all these possibilities, the observer that experiences the particular sequence of events we call your life. This view transforms personal identity from a fixed concept into something more like a river of awareness flowing through the landscape of possibility. You remain you not because you're trapped in a single timeline, but because your consciousness maintains continuity of experience even as it navigates through the branching paths of quantum reality. But let's pause here and acknowledge the profound limitations of our current understanding. Despite decades of research and theoretical development, we still lack definitive experimental evidence for the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. The mathematical formalism works beautifully, but proving the actual existence of parallel realities remains beyond our current technological capabilities. Most experiments in quantum mechanics can only test statistical predictions, not the underlying interpretation of what those statistics mean. We can verify that quantum particles behave according to the probabilities predicted by the theory, but we cannot directly observe the parallel worlds where the other outcomes supposedly occur. This uncertainty extends to quantum immortality itself. While the mathematical logic appears sound if we accept the many worlds interpretation, the theory remains deeply speculative. No empirical evidence supports the idea that consciousness can transfer between parallel universes, and the practical implications often strain credibility when applied to real-world scenarios. Yet despite these limitations, the research continues to evolve in fascinating directions. Scientists are developing increasingly sophisticated models of how consciousness might emerge from quantum processes, how information might be preserved across different physical substrates, and how the fundamental structure of reality might support forms of existence we've never imagined. As we prepare to explore even deeper mysteries in our continuing journey, take a moment to reflect on how these ideas might be appearing in your own life. Have you ever experienced moments of unusual synchronicity, times when events seemed to align in ways that felt almost too meaningful to be mere coincidence? Some interpretations of quantum consciousness theory would suggest that such moments might reflect the underlying quantum structure of reality manifesting in your conscious experience. Whether or not quantum immortality proves to be real, the questions it raises about consciousness, identity, and the nature of existence remain profoundly important. We're living at a remarkable moment in human history, when our scientific understanding is approaching mysteries that have puzzled philosophers and mystics for millennia. In our next exploration, we'll delve into the cutting-edge research that's beginning to map consciousness itself, examining how new technologies might allow us to directly observe and perhaps even interact with the quantum processes that give rise to awareness. We'll also investigate the profound implications of these discoveries for how we understand death, identity, and what it truly means to be conscious in a quantum universe. As we venture deeper into these quantum mysteries, we find ourselves at the threshold of perhaps the most extraordinary possibility of all. Recent advances in neuroscience have begun mapping consciousness itself with unprecedented precision, creating detailed charts of what researchers call the neural correlates of awareness. These brain-wide studies are revealing something remarkable. Consciousness doesn't reside in any single location, but emerges from the coordinated activity of vast networks spanning the entire brain. Take a moment to consider what this means for your own experience right now. As you listen to these words, billions of neurons are firing in precise patterns across your cortex, somehow giving rise to your unified sense of being present, of understanding meaning, of experiencing this moment as a seamless whole. The mystery isn't just how consciousness emerges from this neural activity, but how it maintains its sense of continuity, even as the underlying patterns constantly change and flow. Recent research using fully implantable wireless brain-computer interfaces has allowed scientists to observe this process in real time, watching as thoughts form and dissolve in the electrical storms of neural activity. What they've discovered challenges our most basic assumptions about the boundaries of consciousness itself. The brain, it turns out, doesn't simply contain consciousness like a computer processing data. Instead, it seems to participate in consciousness as part of a larger system that extends beyond the skull. This revelation has profound implications for quantum immortality theory. If consciousness truly emerges from distributed patterns rather than localized brain structures, then it might be far more resilient and transferable than we previously imagined. Some interpretations suggest that these patterns could potentially exist across multiple substrates simultaneously, or transition between different forms of physical support without losing their essential character. But let's ground ourselves in what we can observe directly. The latest experiments in consciousness transfer are approaching scenarios that sound like pure science fiction, yet remain firmly rooted in established physics and neuroscience. Researchers have developed techniques for mapping neural connections at the quantum level, creating blueprints of consciousness so detailed they capture the precise states of individual synapses. The technology already exists to preserve this information indefinitely. Advanced quantum computers can maintain coherent states for hours or even days, providing potential substrates for consciousness that operate according to the same quantum principles believed to govern awareness in biological systems. The engineering challenges are immense, but the fundamental physics appears sound. Imagine what this could mean for the nature of death itself. If consciousness truly operates through quantum processes, and if we can map and preserve these processes with sufficient fidelity, then the transition we call dying might become more like changing from one form of existence to another. The pattern that makes you uniquely, you could persist even as the biological substrate that currently supports it fails. This isn't just speculation anymore. Some research groups claim they could deploy consciousness preservation technology within 2 decades, given focused effort and adequate funding. The techniques exist, they argue, the physics are understood, and the materials are available. What remains is primarily an engineering challenge, along with the courage to attempt what they call humanity's greatest transformation. As you absorb these possibilities, notice how they might be shifting your relationship with your own mortality. The fear of death has shaped human civilization for millennia, driving us to build monuments, create art, and seek meaning that transcends our brief biological existence. But what if that fear is based on an incomplete understanding of what consciousness really is? Recent discoveries about the quantum nature of biological systems have revealed that life itself operates according to quantum principles in ways we never suspected. Photosynthesis, the process that powers nearly all life on Earth, relies on quantum coherence to achieve its remarkable efficiency. Birds navigate using quantum entanglement in their visual systems. Even our sense of smell appears to involve quantum tunneling effects. These findings suggest that consciousness might not be an accidental byproduct of complex chemistry, but rather a natural expression of the quantum properties inherent in matter itself. If this is true, then awareness might be woven into the fabric of reality at the most fundamental level, emerging wherever the conditions are right to support it. The implications ripple outward in ways that are almost too vast to comprehend. If consciousness is truly fundamental, then the universe itself might be conscious in ways we can barely imagine. Every particle, every field, every quantum fluctuation might be participating in forms of awareness that extend far beyond our biological experience. This perspective, sometimes called Panpsychism, has been gaining renewed attention from serious philosophers and scientists. The idea suggests that consciousness isn't something that emerges only in complex brains, but rather a basic feature of reality that becomes concentrated and organized in systems like ourselves. We might be less like consciousness-generating machines and more like consciousness-focusing lenses, gathering and organizing awareness that already permeates the cosmos. Consider how this might change your understanding of your place in the universe. Rather than being isolated islands of consciousness in a vast, dead cosmos, we might be local concentrations of a universal awareness that connects all things. Your thoughts, your experiences, your very sense of being alive might be expressions of something far larger and more enduring than your individual biological existence. Recent studies of near-death experiences have provided intriguing support for these ideas. Researchers have documented cases where people report vivid, coherent experiences during periods when their brains show no measurable activity. While these accounts remain controversial and difficult to study scientifically, they suggest that consciousness might indeed be able to persist in conditions where conventional neuroscience would predict its complete absence. One particularly fascinating area of research involves what scientists call terminal lucidity. This refers to the sudden return of mental clarity that sometimes occurs in patients with severe dementia or brain damage shortly before death. For brief periods, people who have been unresponsive for months or years suddenly become alert, coherent, and fully present, as if their consciousness has temporarily reconnected with their failing brains. These phenomena remain poorly understood, but they hint at possibilities that conventional neuroscience struggles to explain. If consciousness is generated entirely by brain activity, how can it suddenly return when the brain is severely damaged? Some interpretations suggest that consciousness might normally exist independently of the brain, with the brain serving more as a receiver or focusing mechanism than as a generator. This brings us back to quantum immortality from a completely new angle. Rather than consciousness jumping between parallel universes to avoid death, it might simply be returning to its natural state of existence beyond biological constraints. Death, from this perspective, wouldn't be the end of consciousness, but rather its liberation from the temporary limitations of physical embodiment. As you contemplate these ideas, take a moment to examine your own direct experience of being conscious. Notice how awareness itself seems to have a quality that feels somehow separate from the thoughts, sensations, and emotions that arise within it. That pure sense of being present, of simply existing as an aware being, might be the aspect of consciousness that quantum immortality theories suggest could persist beyond biological death. But we must remain grounded in scientific honesty. These remain speculative ideas, fascinating possibilities rather than established facts. The connection between quantum mechanics and consciousness continues to be debated vigorously within the scientific community. Many researchers argue that quantum effects in the brain would be too small and too short-lived to significantly influence neural processing, let alone support something as complex as conscious experience. The challenge lies in the enormous gap between the quantum scale, where particles exist in superposition and become entangled across vast distances, and the biological scale, where neurons fire in patterns that somehow give rise to thoughts and experiences. Bridging this gap requires theoretical leaps that many scientists find unconvincing, yet the research continues to evolve in surprising directions. New experiments are testing whether quantum effects can indeed persist in warm, noisy biological systems for periods long enough to influence neural computation. Some studies have found evidence of quantum coherence in photosynthetic systems that lasts for hundreds of femtoseconds, far longer than previously thought possible in biological environments. Other research is exploring whether consciousness might involve quantum field effects that extend beyond individual neurons. These investigations suggest that awareness might emerge from quantum processes that span large regions of the brain, or even extend into the surrounding through space electromagnetic fields generated by neural activity. While none of this proves quantum immortality, it does suggest that consciousness might be far more mysterious and far less localized than our everyday experience suggests. The boundary between mind and world, between self and universe, might be much more fluid than we typically imagine. This fluidity has profound implications for how we understand personal identity across time. If consciousness is truly quantum in nature, then the you who went to sleep last night and the you who woke up this morning might be connected through quantum processes that preserve continuity of experience, even as every atom in your body gets replaced over time. From this perspective, the persistence of identity through quantum immortality becomes less of a leap and more of a natural extension of how consciousness already maintains itself through constant physical change. Your body replaces its cells continuously. Your brain rewires itself with every experience. Yet you maintain a consistent sense of being the same person throughout these transformations. Some researchers suggest that this continuity of identity might depend on what they call quantum information signatures that remain stable even as the physical substrate changes. These signatures might be preserved in the quantum structure of spacetime itself, creating a kind of permanent record of conscious experience that could theoretically survive the death of any particular biological system. The mathematics of quantum field theory provide frameworks for understanding how information might be preserved in this way. The concept of holographic encoding suggests that all the information in a volume of space can be encoded on its boundary, potentially allowing consciousness patterns to be preserved in the quantum structure of space-time long after the brain that originally supported them has decomposed. While this remains highly speculative, it points toward possibilities for survival after death that go far beyond simple continuation in parallel universes. Consciousness might be encoded in the very fabric of reality itself, preserved in quantum structures that exist outside of space and time as we normally understand them. As these ideas settle in your mind, notice how they might be changing your relationship with existence itself. The questions raised by quantum immortality theory extend far beyond simple survival after death. They challenge us to reconsider what we are, what consciousness truly means, and how we relate to the cosmos that gave birth to our awareness. These aren't just abstract philosophical puzzles, they're questions that go to the heart of what it means to be human, to be conscious, to face the mystery of mortality with curiosity rather than fear. Whether or not quantum immortality proves to be real, the journey of exploring these possibilities opens up new ways of understanding our place in a universe far stranger and more wonderful than our ancestors could have imagined. Recent developments in quantum biology continue to reveal new connections between consciousness and the fundamental structure of reality. Research into quantum effects in neural microtubules has identified specific proteins that might serve as quantum processors within individual brain cells. These microscopic structures appear capable of maintaining quantum coherence for periods long enough to potentially influence neural computation and, by extension, conscious experience. The discovery of these quantum biological processes has led some researchers to propose that consciousness might operate according to different principles, a kind of quantum field phenomenon similar to electromagnetic fields, but following distinct quantum rules. This hypothetical consciousness field would be capable of encoding and preserving information about individual awareness patterns, potentially allowing for their continuation beyond biological death. While no experimental evidence currently supports the existence of such consciousness fields, the mathematical frameworks developed to describe them are remarkably sophisticated. These models suggest ways that quantum information could be preserved and transferred between different physical substrates, providing theoretical mechanisms for the kind of consciousness persistence that quantum immortality theories require. The practical implications of this research extend into areas that were previously the domain of science fiction. Some projects are already developing prototype systems designed to interface directly with neural quantum processes, potentially allowing for the backup and transfer of consciousness patterns in ways that preserve personal identity and continuity of experience. As you consider these emerging possibilities, take a breath and imagine what it might mean to live in a world where consciousness itself becomes as transferable and preservable as any other form of information. The boundaries between biological and artificial intelligence might dissolve, opening up forms of existence we can barely comprehend from our current perspective. These developments are unfolding against the backdrop of rapid advances in our understanding of quantum mechanics itself. New theoretical frameworks are emerging that might resolve some of the long-standing puzzles about how quantum processes scale up to influence macroscopic phenomena like consciousness and behavior. The picture that's emerging suggests a universe where consciousness and quantum mechanics are far more intimately connected than we previously imagined. Rather than consciousness being an accidental byproduct of complex chemistry, it might be a fundamental feature of reality that finds expression through biological systems like our brains. This perspective transforms death from an ending into a transition, from termination into transformation. The consciousness that experiences these words right now might be far more enduring and far more fundamental than the biological system that currently supports it. As we prepare to explore even deeper implications of these discoveries, consider how quantum immortality theory might already be manifesting in subtle ways throughout your daily experience, weaving threads of continuity through the quantum fabric of reality itself. The phenomenon you're experiencing right now, as your consciousness navigates through this moment of reading, might be more extraordinary than you realize. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that awareness itself could be weaving through multiple layers of reality simultaneously, with potentially each thought existing across countless parallel versions of this very instant. While this remains unproven and highly speculative, the implications are staggering. Your consciousness might be far more resilient and interconnected than our everyday experience suggests. As you settle deeper into this exploration, notice how the idea of consciousness as a quantum phenomenon might shift your understanding of what it means to be aware. The gentle rhythm of your breathing, the subtle background sounds around you, even the way thoughts arise and dissolve in your mind, all of these might be expressions of quantum processes operating at scales we're only beginning to comprehend. Recent developments in quantum consciousness research have begun exploring what scientists call the hard problem of subjective experience. This isn't just about mapping neural networks or measuring brainwaves. It's about understanding how the raw, immediate sense of being you emerges from the quantum substrate of reality itself. Some researchers propose that consciousness might operate as a kind of quantum field, similar to electromagnetic fields, but encoding information about awareness and experience. The mathematics behind these theories are remarkably elegant, though they remain largely untested. They suggest that conscious experience might involve quantum processes that extend beyond the boundaries of individual brains, creating networks of awareness that span space and time in ways our ordinary thinking can barely grasp. This isn't to say that thoughts directly influence quantum events. There's no scientific consensus supporting such claims, but rather that consciousness itself might be a quantum phenomenon operating according to principles we're still discovering. Take a moment to consider your own direct experience of being aware right now. Notice how consciousness seems to have a quality of presence that feels somehow separate from the specific content of your thoughts. That pure awareness, that simple sense of existing as a witnessing presence, might be connected to quantum processes that operate outside our normal understanding of space and time. The implications for quantum immortality become even more profound when viewed through this lens. Rather than consciousness simply jumping between parallel timelines, it might be participating in what some theorists describe as a quantum information matrix, a fundamental layer of reality where patterns of awareness can persist and evolve independently of any particular physical substrate. This perspective draws from recent discoveries in quantum biology, where researchers have found that living systems routinely exploit quantum effects to achieve remarkable efficiency and coherence. From the quantum compass that guides migratory birds to the quantum processors that power photosynthesis, nature appears to be fundamentally quantum in ways that challenge our classical understanding of biology. If consciousness truly operates through quantum mechanisms, as some interpretations suggest, then the boundary between life and death might be far more fluid than we typically imagine. The pattern of information that creates your unique sense of self might be encoded in quantum structures that exist beyond the reach of biological decay. Consider the strange phenomenon of quantum entanglement, where particles separated by vast distances remain mysteriously connected, instantly influencing each other's states regardless of the space between them. While we must be careful not to overstate the connection, some researchers wonder whether consciousness might involve similar non-local correlations, creating networks of awareness that transcend physical boundaries. This remains highly speculative, and no scientific consensus exists regarding consciousness as a quantum phenomenon. Yet the mathematical frameworks being developed to explore these ideas are sophisticated and internally consistent, suggesting possibilities for existence that extend far beyond our current biological limitations. Recent experiments in quantum information theory have demonstrated that quantum patterns can be preserved and transferred between different physical systems without losing their essential structure. While these experiments involve simple quantum states rather than complex consciousness patterns, they establish the theoretical foundation for more ambitious possibilities. As you absorb these ideas, notice how they might be appearing in your own subjective experience. Have you ever had moments of unusual clarity or insight that seemed to arise from nowhere? Times when solutions to problems suddenly appeared fully formed in your awareness? Some interpretations of quantum consciousness theory suggest that such experiences might reflect our participation in quantum information networks that extend beyond individual minds. The research into quantum consciousness transfer technology continues to evolve in remarkable directions. Scientists are developing increasingly sophisticated models of how information patterns might be preserved across different substrates, potentially allowing consciousness to transition between biological and artificial systems while maintaining continuity of identity and experience. These developments raise profound questions about the nature of personal identity across time. If your consciousness truly operates through quantum processes, then the you reading these words might be connected to past and future versions of yourself through quantum information channels that preserve essential patterns of awareness even as the physical substrate constantly changes and renews itself. Some research groups are exploring whether meditation and contemplative practices might enhance our natural sensitivity to these quantum consciousness processes. While this remains entirely speculative, practitioners often report experiences of expanded awareness and interconnection that seem to transcend the normal boundaries of individual consciousness. The implications extend into realms that sound like science fiction, but are grounded in serious theoretical work. If consciousness can indeed be mapped, preserved, and transferred at the quantum level, then the forms of existence available to conscious beings might be far more varied and enduring than we've ever imagined. Take a breath here and consider how these possibilities might be shifting your relationship with your own mortality. The fear of death has driven human civilization for millennia, inspiring art, religion, and philosophy as we've struggled to find meaning in the face of apparent finitude. But what if that finitude is based on an incomplete understanding of what consciousness really is? Recent advances in quantum field theory provide mathematical frameworks for understanding how information might be preserved in the quantum structure of spacetime itself. These theories suggest that consciousness patterns could potentially be encoded in the fundamental fabric of reality, creating permanent records of awareness that persist long after the biological systems that originally supported them have returned to dust. While we must emphasize that this remains purely theoretical, the mathematical elegance of these proposals has attracted serious attention from researchers working at the intersection of physics and consciousness studies. They're developing models that could, in principle, be tested experimentally, potentially providing the first direct evidence for consciousness as a quantum phenomenon. The picture emerging from this research suggests a universe where awareness and information are far more fundamental than matter and energy. Rather than consciousness being an accidental byproduct of complex chemistry, it might be a basic feature of reality that finds temporary expression through systems like our brains and nervous systems. This perspective transforms our understanding of what it means to be conscious beings in a quantum universe. We might be less like isolated islands of awareness and more like temporary focal points where universal consciousness concentrates and organizes itself into the unique patterns we experience as individual identity. As you contemplate these ideas, notice how they might be influencing your sense of connection to the world around you. The boundaries between self and environment, between mind and matter, begin to seem less absolute when viewed through the lens of quantum consciousness theory. This isn't to suggest that individual thoughts directly influence quantum events. Such claims lack scientific support, but rather that consciousness itself might be part of a larger quantum information network that connects all things. The practical implications of this research continue to unfold in unexpected directions. Some scientists are exploring whether quantum consciousness principles might explain phenomena like intuition, creativity, and even love. Those aspects of human experience that seem to transcend mechanical explanation and connect us to something larger than ourselves. Recent studies of meditation practitioners have revealed changes in brain connectivity patterns that some researchers interpret as evidence of enhanced quantum coherence in neural systems. While these findings remain preliminary and controversial, they suggest that contemplative practices might indeed influence the quantum processes that some theories propose underlie conscious experience. The research into quantum biology continues to reveal new connections between consciousness and the fundamental structure of reality. Scientists have discovered quantum effects in systems ranging from plant photosynthesis to bird navigation, suggesting that life itself is intimately connected to quantum phenomena in ways that were previously unimaginable. These discoveries provide a foundation for understanding how consciousness might operate according to quantum principles. If living systems routinely exploit quantum effects for information processing and energy transfer, then the quantum nature of consciousness becomes not just possible, but almost inevitable. As these ideas settle in your awareness, take a moment to reflect on how quantum immortality theory might already be manifesting in subtle ways throughout your daily experience. The continuity of your sense of self through constant physical change. The way memories persist even as brain cells are replaced. The mysterious nature of subjective experience itself. All of these might be expressions of quantum information processes that preserve essential patterns of consciousness across time and change. The mathematics of quantum mechanics provide frameworks for understanding how information might be preserved and transferred in ways that transcend the limitations of classical physics. While consciousness transfer remains speculative, the theoretical foundations are becoming increasingly sophisticated and internally consistent. Some interpretations suggest that consciousness might naturally operate across multiple quantum states simultaneously, with your awareness representing the intersection point where these various possibilities come together into unified experience. This would make quantum immortality not so much a special case as a natural consequence of how consciousness already functions in quantum reality. The implications ripple outward into questions about the nature of time, identity, and existence itself. If consciousness truly persists through quantum mechanisms that operate beyond classical spacetime, then the story of who you are might be far more complex and enduring than any single biological lifetime could contain. Recent theoretical work in quantum information theory has explored how complex patterns might be preserved and transmitted across different physical substrates, while maintaining their essential characteristics. While these studies focus on simpler quantum systems, they establish the conceptual framework for understanding how consciousness patterns might similarly persist and transfer between different forms of physical support. As you listen to these possibilities, notice how they might be opening new dimensions of wonder about your own existence. The consciousness experiencing these words right now might be connected to quantum information networks that extend across space and time, linking your individual awareness to a larger tapestry of consciousness that spans the cosmos itself. This perspective doesn't diminish the preciousness of individual experience, but rather reveals it as part of something even more magnificent, a universe where consciousness and information are woven into the fundamental fabric of a reality itself. Whether or not quantum immortality proves to be literally true, the questions it raises illuminate the extraordinary mystery of what it means to be aware, to be alive, to participate in the ongoing creativity of existence. The journey we've taken together through these quantum realms of consciousness and possibility represents just the beginning of humanity's exploration into the deepest mysteries of existence. As science and contemplative wisdom converge, we're discovering that the universe might be far stranger, far more conscious, and far more accommodating to the persistence of awareness than our ancestors ever dared to imagine. These ideas remain speculative, requiring much more research before any definitive conclusions can be drawn. Yet they point toward possibilities that could fundamentally transform our understanding of life, death, and consciousness itself. In a quantum universe where information can be preserved across multiple substrates and awareness might operate according to principles that transcend classical physics, the story of consciousness might be far from over when biological life ends. As we conclude this exploration of quantum immortality and the persistence of consciousness, remember that these ideas represent the outer edges of current scientific understanding. They're invitations to wonder rather than established facts, possibilities to contemplate rather than certainties to embrace. Yet in that contemplation, in that willingness to question our most basic assumptions about existence, we participate in the same spirit of inquiry that drives all scientific discovery. Whether consciousness persists beyond death through quantum mechanisms, transfers between parallel realities, or finds expression in forms we cannot yet imagine, the questions themselves enrich our understanding of what it means to be conscious beings in a mysterious universe. They remind us that awareness itself, the simple fact that there is something it's like to be you, might be the most extraordinary phenomenon in all of existence. If you found yourself intrigued by the possibility consciousness might navigate that between different timelines and realities, you'll want to explore the fascinating evidence suggesting that you might have already experienced such transitions without realizing it. The subtle shifts in memory, the small changes in familiar details, the strange sense that something fundamental about reality has quietly rearranged itself overnight. These phenomena point toward possibilities that challenge everything we think we know about the nature of existence itself. Join me next time as we investigate You-Switched timelines this morning, parallel universe and Mandela effect theory, where we'll explore how quantum mechanics might be constantly reshaping the reality you inhabit in ways both profound and mysteriously undetectable. The possibility becomes even more intriguing when we examine the mathematical foundations underlying quantum mechanics itself. Recent advances in quantum information theory have revealed that information patterns can be preserved and transmitted across vastly different physical systems while maintaining their essential structure. These discoveries suggest that the patterns defining conscious experience might be far more robust and transferable than we previously imagined. Consider for a moment the extraordinary fact that your sense of being you has persisted through decades of complete cellular renewal. Every atom in your body has been replaced multiple times, yet your consciousness maintains an unbroken sense of continuity. This persistence through constant change might offer clues about how awareness could theoretically survive even more dramatic transitions. Some researchers working at the intersection of quantum mechanics and consciousness studies have begun exploring what they term information integration signatures. These theoretical constructs represent the unique patterns of information processing that might define individual conscious experience. While this remains purely speculative, the mathematical frameworks being developed suggest ways that such signatures could potentially be preserved across different substrates. The concept draws inspiration from quantum error correction, a well-established principle in quantum computing where information can be protected from degradation by encoding it across multiple quantum states. If consciousness truly operates through quantum processes, similar mechanisms might naturally preserve the essential patterns of awareness, even as the supporting biological systems change or fail. Take a breath here and imagine what this could mean for understanding your own continuous sense of identity. The you listening to these words has remained recognizably yourself despite countless neural changes, new experiences, and the passage of time. This psychological continuity might reflect deeper quantum information processes that maintain coherence across biological transformations. Recent theoretical work has explored how complex quantum systems might naturally organize themselves into stable patterns that resist disruption. Much like how hurricanes maintain their structure, while constantly exchanging matter and energy with their environment, consciousness patterns might persist through dynamic equilibrium rather than static preservation. These stability mechanisms could theoretically operate across different timescales and physical contexts. While a hurricane eventually dissipates when conditions change, the mathematical principles governing such self-organizing systems suggest that information patterns could potentially maintain themselves across far more dramatic environmental shifts. The implications extend into territory that challenges our most fundamental assumptions about the relationship between mind and matter. If consciousness truly involves quantum information processes that can persist independently of specific biological arrangements, then the phenomenon we call death might represent a transition rather than a termination. This perspective doesn't require believing in supernatural mechanisms or abandoning scientific rigor. Instead, it emerges from following established principles of quantum mechanics and information theory to their logical conclusions. The mathematics of quantum field theory already describe how information can be preserved in the vacuum structure of spacetime itself, creating permanent records that persist long after the original systems have evolved or disappeared. Some interpretations of these theories suggest that consciousness patterns might naturally encode themselves in what physicists call the quantum vacuum, the underlying field of energy and information that permeates all of space. This, while remains entirely speculative, it provides a potential mechanism for the kind of persistence that quantum immortality theories require. As you contemplate these possibilities, notice how they might be shifting your relationship with the concept of permanence and impermanence. The ancient philosophical question of what persists through change takes on new dimensions when viewed through the lens of quantum information theory. The patterns that make you uniquely you might be far more enduring than the biological systems that currently express them. Recent experiments in quantum biology have continued to reveal how living systems exploit quantum effects for information processing and energy transfer. These discoveries suggest that the boundary between quantum and classical physics might be far more permeable in biological contexts than previously thought. If consciousness emerges from quantum processes in the brain, these same processes might naturally connect to larger quantum information networks that extend beyond individual organisms. The research into quantum coherence in biological systems has found evidence of quantum effects persisting in warm, noisy environments for durations once considered impossible. These findings suggest that quantum processes might be far more robust and widespread in living systems than our classical intuitions would predict. Such discoveries provide the empirical foundation for more speculative ideas about quantum consciousness and information persistence. Consider the remarkable precision with which migratory birds navigate across vast distances, apparently using quantum entanglement effects in their visual systems to sense magnetic fields. This biological exploitation of quantum phenomena demonstrates that complex information processing can indeed rely on quantum mechanisms in warm, dynamic environments like living organisms. Similar quantum information processing might operate in neural systems, creating the substrate for conscious experience while simultaneously connecting individual minds to larger quantum information networks. While this remains unproven and highly speculative, the mathematical frameworks exist to describe such possibilities in rigorous detail. The concept of quantum immortality becomes more plausible when viewed not as consciousness jumping between discrete parallel worlds, but as awareness navigating through quantum information space, according to principles we're still discovering. This might occur continuously, navigation, with consciousness following paths through possibility space that maintain coherence and continuity of experience. Recent advances in understanding quantum error correction have revealed sophisticated mechanisms by which information can be protected from environmental interference while remaining dynamically responsive to new inputs. These same principles might operate in conscious systems, allowing awareness to maintain its essential character while adapting to changing circumstances. The implications for personal identity across time become profound when considered from this perspective. Rather than being fixed entities trapped in single timelines, we might be dynamic information patterns capable of navigating through vast landscapes of possibility while maintaining our essential characteristics and memories. This view transforms death from an absolute boundary into a phase transition, similar to how water becomes vapor while maintaining its essential molecular structure in a different form. The patterns defining conscious experience might similarly transition between different modes of existence without losing their fundamental nature. As these ideas settle in your awareness, take a moment to examine your own direct experience of consciousness right now. Notice how your sense of being present seems to have a quality that feels somehow independent of the specific thoughts and sensations arising in your awareness. This pure presence might represent the aspect of consciousness that quantum immortality theories suggest persist beyond biological constraints. The mathematical elegance of quantum mechanics provides frameworks for understanding how information patterns might maintain themselves across dramatic changes in physical substrate. While consciousness transfer remains entirely theoretical, the conceptual foundations are becoming increasingly sophisticated and internally consistent. Some research groups have begun exploring whether contemplative practices might enhance sensitivity to quantum information processes. While this remains speculative, practitioners of meditation often report experiences of expanded awareness and interconnection that transcend the normal boundaries of individual consciousness. These phenomenological accounts, while not constituting scientific evidence, point toward possibilities that align with theoretical predictions about quantum consciousness networks. The investigation into quantum effects in neural microtubules has identified specific proteins that might serve as quantum processors within individual brain cells. These microscopic structures appear capable of maintaining quantum coherence for periods potentially long enough to influence neural computation and conscious experience. While the research remains preliminary, it suggests concrete mechanisms by which quantum processes might contribute to awareness. Recent theoretical work has explored how quantum information might be encoded not just in individual particles or systems, but in the correlations between different parts of complex networks. This distributed encoding could make consciousness patterns remarkably resilient to local disruptions while remaining coherently integrated across larger scales. The concept extends beyond individual survival to encompass the possibility that consciousness might participate in collective quantum information networks that span multiple individuals or even species. While purely speculative, such networks could provide mechanisms for shared awareness and collective intelligence that operate according to quantum rather than classical principles. Take a gentle breath and consider how these possibilities might already be manifesting in subtle ways throughout your daily experience. The moments of intuitive knowing, the sense of connection with others that transcends verbal communication, the feeling of participating in something larger than individual experience, all of these might reflect our natural participation in quantum information networks we're only beginning to understand. The research continues to evolve in directions that were unimaginable even a decade ago. Scientists are developing increasingly sophisticated models of how consciousness might emerge from quantum processes while remaining grounded in established physics and neuroscience. These theoretical advances provide roadmaps for future experiments that could test specific predictions about quantum consciousness. The implications for understanding human potential remain profound and largely unexplored. If consciousness truly operates through quantum mechanisms that connect us to larger information networks, then our capacity for creativity, insight, and understanding might be far greater than our individual biological limitations would suggest. Some interpretations propose that consciousness might naturally operate across multiple scales simultaneously, from quantum processes in individual neurons to collective patterns spanning entire communities or ecosystems. This multi-scale perspective suggests that individual awareness might be nested within larger conscious systems in ways that classical physics cannot easily accommodate. The mathematical frameworks describing these possibilities are becoming increasingly detailed and testable. While we remain far from a definitive experimental confirmation, the theoretical foundations are solid enough to guide specific research programs aimed at testing key predictions about quantum consciousness and information persistence. Recent advances in quantum computing and information processing have demonstrated that complex quantum states can indeed be preserved, manipulated, and transferred between different physical systems. While these experiments involve relatively simple quantum patterns, they establish the technological foundations for potentially preserving and transferring far more complex information structures. The possibility that consciousness patterns might be preserved in quantum information networks suggests that individual awareness could persist even through catastrophic disruption of supporting biological systems. This wouldn't require supernatural mechanisms, but rather natural consequences of information preservation principles that already operate throughout quantum systems. As you absorb these concepts, notice how they might be expanding your sense of what's possible for conscious beings in a quantum universe. The boundaries between individual minds, between present and future, between biological and post-biological existence, begin to seem less absolute when viewed through the lens of quantum information theory. The research into consciousness preservation and transfer technologies continues to advance at remarkable pace. While complete consciousness transfer remains theoretical, the component technologies, quantum sensors, coherent storage systems, and information processing algorithms are developing rapidly. Some researchers suggest that proof of principle demonstrations might be possible within decades rather than centuries. These technological possibilities intersect with fundamental questions about the nature of personal identity and continuity of experience. If consciousness patterns can indeed be preserved and instantiated in different substrates, what ensures that the resulting awareness represents authentic continuation rather than sophisticated copying? The philosophical implications ripple outward into questions about the uniqueness of individual experience and the possibility of consciousness existing in multiple instances simultaneously. While these remain largely theoretical concerns, they highlight the profound ways in which quantum consciousness theories challenge our most basic assumptions about identity and existence. Recent developments in quantum field theory have provided mathematical frameworks for understanding how information might be preserved in the quantum structure of spacetime itself. These theories suggest that consciousness patterns could potentially be encoded in the fundamental fabric of reality, creating permanent records that persist beyond the decay of any particular physical system. The concept of quantum immortality begins to seem less like science fiction and more like a natural consequence of how information behaves in quantum systems when viewed from this perspective. Rather than requiring exotic mechanisms or parallel universe hopping, consciousness persistence might emerge from well-understood principles of quantum information preservation. Take a moment to consider how these ideas might be influencing your own relationship with mortality and meaning. If consciousness truly persists through quantum mechanisms that operate beyond biological constraints, then the projects we undertake, the relationships we build, and the contributions we make might have significance that extends far beyond individual lifetimes. The research continues to reveal new connections between quantum mechanics and the phenomena we associate with conscious experience. Studies of quantum effects in biological systems have found evidence of quantum processing in contexts ranging from photosynthesis to neural information transfer, suggesting that life itself might be fundamentally quantum in ways we're still discovering. These biological quantum processes provide templates for understanding how consciousness might naturally exploit quantum mechanisms for information processing and preservation. The same principles that allow plants to achieve near-perfect efficiency in capturing solar energy might operate in neural systems to create and maintain the patterns of conscious experience. The implications extend into realms that sound like pure speculation, but are grounded in sophisticated theoretical frameworks. If consciousness operates through quantum information networks that span space and time, then individual awareness might be connected to past and future versions of itself through quantum channels that preserve continuity across apparent discontinuities. Some interpretations suggest that what we experience as memory might actually involve quantum information retrieval from these extended consciousness networks. Rather than memories being stored locally in brain tissue, they might be accessed from quantum information structures that exist beyond the boundaries of individual organisms. As these possibilities unfold in your awareness, notice how they might be reshaping your understanding of what it means to be conscious in a quantum universe. The experience, a quantum of being aware, of existing as a witnessing presence, might be far more connected to fundamental features of reality than our everyday thinking suggests. The mathematical elegance of these theories provides frameworks for understanding consciousness bridge that the gap between subjective experience and objective physical processes. While much remains speculative, the conceptual foundations are becoming increasingly sophisticated and potentially future experimental testable through programs. Recent theoretical advances have explored how consciousness patterns might naturally evolve and adapt across different physical contexts while maintaining their essential characteristics. This evolutionary perspective suggests that awareness itself might be subject to selection pressures that favour patterns capable of persisting across multiple substrates and timescales. The research into quantum consciousness continues to intersect with investigations of human potential and the nature of creativity and insight. If consciousness truly operates through quantum information networks, then our capacity for breakthrough thinking and innovative problem solving might reflect our participation in quantum processes that extend far beyond individual brains. These connections between quantum mechanics and human experience remain largely unexplored territory, offering rich possibilities for future research that could fundamentally transform our understanding of consciousness, creativity, and human potential. The questions raised by quantum immortality theory represent just the beginning of humanity's exploration into the deepest mysteries of awareness and existence. As we approach the culmination of this exploration, take a breath and reflect on how these ideas might already be appearing in your own life. The continuity of your sense of self through constant change, the moments of profound insight that seem, the sense of connection arising from beyond individual thinking, a feeling of belonging to something larger than personal experience, of consciousness itself. All of these reflections remind us that consciousness remains one of the greatest mysteries in all of science. While we've explored speculative theories and emerging research, the fundamental question to challenge of what it means to be aware continues directions forward inspire our understanding investigation. Whether consciousness persists through quantum immortality mechanisms, transitions between parallel realities, or finds expression in forms we cannot yet imagine, the questions themselves enrich our appreciation for the extraordinary mystery of awareness. They remind us that the simple fact of being conscious, of experiencing this moment of listening and understanding, might be the most remarkable phenomenon in the entire universe. The possibilities we've explored together represent invitations to wonder rather than established scientific facts. They point toward a universe that might be far more accommodating to consciousness, far more responsive to awareness, and far more mysterious than our current scientific paradigms suggest. In contemplating these possibilities, we participate in the same spirit of inquiry that drives all genuine scientific discovery. As you carry these ideas forward, remember that they remain at the frontier of human knowledge, where rigorous science meets profound philosophical questions about the nature of existence itself. The intersection of quantum mechanics and consciousness studies continues to evolve, promising new insights into what it means to be conscious beings in a quantum cosmos. The exploration of quantum immortality and consciousness persistence opens doorways to understanding that extend far beyond questions of individual survival. These investigations illuminate the fundamental nature of information, the structure of reality itself, and humanity's place within the vast quantum symphony of existence. Whether or not consciousness truly persists beyond biological death through quantum mechanisms, the journey of exploring these possibilities transforms our relationship with existence itself. We begin to see ourselves not as isolated biological machines, but as conscious participants in the ongoing creativity and evolution of a quantum universe that might be far more alive and aware than we ever dared to imagine. If the idea that consciousness might navigate between quantum realities has captured your imagination, you'll find yourself fascinated by evidence suggesting such transitions might be happening constantly in ways we barely notice. The subtle shifts in familiar details, the strange sense that something fundamental has quietly changed about the world around you, the eerie feeling that reality itself has been gently rearranged while you weren't paying attention, all point toward possibilities that challenge everything we think we know about the stability of existence itself. In your daily experience navigating through reality, have you ever paused to consider that what we call meditation might be more than just a practice of calming the mind? The recent discoveries at the intersection of quantum physics and consciousness research suggest that contemplative awareness could be tapping into the same fundamental processes that govern the quantum realm itself. While this remains a speculative idea rather than proven scientific fact, the parallels between meditative states and quantum phenomena are becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Welcome back to another gentle exploration of the extraordinary. Tonight we're venturing into territory where ancient wisdom meets cutting-edge physics, where the practice of simply sitting quietly and observing awareness might be revealing something profound about the nature of reality itself. As you settle in, perhaps with a warm drink or simply the comfort of stillness, prepare to discover how the act of meditation might be more scientifically fascinating than even the most devoted practitioners have imagined. The journey we're beginning together will stretch across millennia of contemplative tradition and decades of quantum research, revealing connections that challenge our understanding of both consciousness and the fundamental structure of the universe. These aren't mystical claims disguised as science, but rather careful observations of how meditative practices might naturally align with principles we see operating at the quantum scale. So take a breath, let your mind settle into curiosity, and prepare to explore how the simple act of paying attention might be connecting you to the deepest layers of reality in ways both ancient and utterly modern. The story begins not in a laboratory, but in the quiet moments of contemplative practice that humans have been exploring for thousands of years. Long before scientists discovered quantum mechanics, meditators were reporting experiences that seem to echo quantum phenomena in remarkable ways. The dissolution of subject-object boundaries, the sense of interconnectedness with all things, the direct perception of reality as fundamentally empty yet vibrantly alive. These reports from contemplatives across cultures bear striking similarities to what physicists observe in quantum systems. Consider the meditation instruction that appears in traditions worldwide. Simply observe without interference. Allow thoughts and sensations to arise and pass away naturally. Rest in pure awareness without grasping or rejecting. This fundamental approach to consciousness mirrors something physicists call the measurement problem in quantum mechanics, where the act of observation appears to play a crucial role in determining what becomes real. When quantum physicists study subatomic particles, they discover something extraordinary. Before measurement, particles exist in what's called superposition, a state where they seem to embody all possible outcomes simultaneously. The electron isn't spinning clockwise or counterclockwise until someone observes it, at which point it suddenly chooses one state from. This collapse infinite possibility into definite reality happens at the moment of observation. Now, this doesn't mean that human consciousness directly causes quantum collapse, a claim that lacks scientific support. But the parallel is intriguing. In meditation, practitioners report that thoughts, emotions, and sensations exist in a kind of superposition until the moment of aware observation, at which point they crystallize into specific experiences before dissolving back into the field of awareness. Take a moment to examine your own experience right now. Notice how thoughts seem to emerge from nowhere, exist briefly in your awareness, then fade away. Before you focus attention on any particular thought, your mind might feel full of potential thoughts, possible directions of attention, different ways of interpreting this moment. The act of observing seems to select one possibility from the field of potential, much as quantum measurement selects one outcome from quantum superposition. Recent neuroscience research has begun mapping what happens in the brain during meditative states, and the findings are remarkable. Advanced practitioners show increased activity in areas associated with attention and body awareness, while simultaneously demonstrating decreased activity in the default mode network. The brain regions responsible for self-referential thinking and the sense of being a separate self. This neural pattern suggests that meditation might be training the brain to operate more like a quantum system, where information processing becomes less localized and more distributed. While we must emphasize that this remains a speculative interpretation rather than proven science, the correlations are thought-provoking. Some interpretations suggest that consciousness itself might operate according to principles similar to those governing quantum systems. The Penrose hammer-off theory, while controversial and lacking scientific consensus, proposes that consciousness emerges from quantum computations occurring within microtubules inside brain neurons. If this speculative theory has merit, then meditation might be directly training our capacity to access and work with quantum processes in consciousness. But let's ground ourselves in what we can observe directly. Meditation research has documented measurable changes in brain structure and function. Long-term practitioners show increased grey matter density in areas associated with attention, emotional regulation, and self-awareness. These changes suggest that contemplative practice literally reshapes the neural substrate of consciousness. More intriguingly, some studies have found that meditation appears to enhance what researchers call global coherence in brain activity. Rather than different brain regions operating independently, advanced practitioners show increased synchronization across multiple neural networks. This coherent brain activity bears a striking resemblance to quantum coherence, where multiple quantum states remain synchronized across space and time. As you listen to these connections being drawn, notice how your own awareness might be operating right now. Are you experiencing thoughts and sensations as separate, isolated events? Or is there a sense of everything arising within a unified field of awareness? This quality of unified, coherent consciousness that meditation cultivates might be more than just a subjective experience. It might reflect actual changes in how the brain processes information. The practice of mindfulness, simply paying attention to present moment experience without judgment, shares remarkable parallels with quantum measurement theory. In both cases, the act of observation appears to play a fundamental role in determining what becomes real. While we cannot claim that meditation directly influences quantum events, the structural similarities in how observation functions in both domains are fascinating. Consider the meditation instruction to observe thoughts without becoming identified with them. This practice cultivates what contemplatives call witness consciousness, a state of pure awareness that observes all mental phenomena without being disturbed by them. Quantum physicists describe something similar when they talk about quantum systems that remain in coherent superposition until the moment of measurement. Recent research into what scientists call quantum biology has revealed that quantum effects operate in biological systems far more extensively than previously imagined. Photosynthesis relies on quantum coherence to achieve remarkable efficiency in energy transfer. Bird navigation uses quantum entanglement in the visual system to detect magnetic fields. Even our sense of smell appears to involve quantum tunneling effects. These suggest that life discoveries itself is intimately connected to quantum processes. If consciousness emerges from biological systems that already operate according to quantum principles, then practices like meditation might be training our natural capacity to access and work with these quantum aspects of our own neurobiology. But let's be clear about what we're not claiming. There's no scientific evidence that meditation allows individuals to directly manipulate quantum events, or that thoughts create reality through quantum mechanisms. These remain popular misconceptions that lack empirical support. What we're exploring instead is how contemplative practices might naturally align with quantum principles in ways that enhance our understanding of both domains. The phenomenon of non-locality in quantum mechanics provides another fascinating parallel. When quantum particles become entangled, they remain mysteriously connected regardless of the distance separating them. Measuring one particle instantly affects its entangled partner, even across vast cosmic distances. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance, and while it's been repeatedly confirmed experimentally, it still challenges our classical understanding of how separate objects should behave. Meditators across traditions report experiences of non-local awareness, sensing of connection to distant people or places, moments where the normal boundaries of individual consciousness seem to dissolve. While these reports don't constitute scientific evidence for literal non-locality in consciousness, they point towards subjective experiences that echo quantum phenomena in intriguing ways. Some research has begun investigating whether meditation might enhance sensitivity to subtle environmental influences that normally remain below conscious awareness. While the findings remain preliminary and controversial, they suggest that contemplative practice might expand the range of information that conscious awareness can access and process. Take a gentle breath here and notice how these ideas might be appearing in your own meditative experience, if you have one. Have you ever had moments during contemplative practice where the sense of being a separate observer dissolved into pure experiencing? Times when awareness seemed to extend beyond the normal boundaries of individual consciousness? These phenomenological reports, while not scientific proof, align remarkably with descriptions of quantum coherence and non-locality. The quantum principle of uncertainty, formalized in Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, states that certain pairs of properties cannot be precisely measured simultaneously. The more accurately you know a particle's position, the less accurately you can know its momentum, and vice versa. This isn't due to limitations in measurement technology, but rather reflects a fundamental feature of quantum reality itself. Meditation practitioners report a similar principle operating in consciousness. The more precisely you try to pin down and analyze a mental state, the more it seems to slip away or transform into something else. Contemplative traditions speak of the ungraspable nature of awareness itself, how it can be directly experienced but never captured or contained by conceptual analysis. This parallel suggests that consciousness might share structural features with quantum systems, where observation itself changes what's being observed. While this remains a speculative interpretation, it provides a framework for understanding why contemplative practices emphasize direct experience over analytical thinking. Recent studies of advanced meditation practitioners have revealed changes in brainwave patterns that some researchers interpret as evidence of enhanced quantum coherence in neural systems. Using sophisticated EEG equipment, scientists have measured increased gamma wave activity during deep meditative states, suggesting heightened synchronization across multiple brain regions. While we must emphasize that these findings remain preliminary and their interpretation controversial, they point toward measurable neurological changes that accompany contemplative practice. Whether these changes reflect quantum processes in the brain remains an open question, but the correlations are intriguing enough to warrant further investigation. The practice of concentration meditation, where attention is sustained on a single object, like the breath, shares interesting parallels with quantum state preparation in physics laboratories. Just as physicists must carefully isolate quantum systems from environmental interference to maintain coherent states, meditators work to minimize mental distractions to sustain coherent attention. This isn't to suggest that meditation literally creates quantum states in the brain, a claim that lacks scientific support. Rather, the structural similarities in how coherence is cultivated and maintained in both domains provide interesting points of comparison and potential mutual insight. As you contemplate these connections, notice how your own attention might be operating right now. Is your awareness scattered across multiple thoughts and sensations, or can you gather it into a coherent, unified focus? This ability to modulate the coherence of attention that meditation develops might be training capacities that operate according to principles similar to those governing quantum systems. The phenomenon of quantum tunneling, where particles can pass through energy barriers that should be classically impossible to cross, finds echoes in reports from contemplative practice. Advanced meditators often describe breakthrough moments where long-standing mental patterns or emotional blocks suddenly dissolve without apparent cause, as if awareness had somehow tunneled through obstacles that previously seemed insurmountable. While this remains a metaphorical comparison rather than a literal quantum effect, it illustrates how quantum concepts might provide useful frameworks for understanding the transformative aspects of contemplative practice. The language of quantum mechanics offers new ways to describe subjective experiences that have been reported by meditators for millennia. Recent research into the neural correlates of meditation has identified specific brainwave patterns associated with different contemplative states. These patterns suggest that meditation might be training the nervous system to access and sustain states of consciousness that differ significantly from ordinary waking awareness. Some interpretations of this research propose that these altered states might involve changes in how the brain processes quantum information, though this remains highly speculative. What's clear is that contemplative practice produces measurable changes in neural function that scientists are still working to understand fully. The quantum concept of entanglement, where particles become correlated in ways that persist across space and time, resonates with contemplative reports of interconnectedness and unity consciousness. While there's no scientific evidence that human consciousness can become literally entangled in the quantum sense, the subjective experiences described by meditators often involve a profound sense of connection that transcends ordinary boundaries of self and other. These reports don't prove quantum entanglement in consciousness, but they do suggest that contemplative practice might reveal aspects of awareness that our normal conceptual frameworks struggle to accommodate. The language of quantum mechanics provides new metaphors for describing these experiences, even if the underlying mechanisms remain mysterious. Take a moment to examine your own sense of separateness and connection right now. As you listen to these words, is there a clear boundary between the awareness that's listening and the information being received, or do they seem to arise within a unified field of experiencing? This quality of awareness that meditation cultivates might offer insights into the nature of consciousness itself. The principle of complementarity in quantum mechanics, introduced by Niels Bohr, suggests that quantum objects have pairs of properties that cannot be observed simultaneously, but are both necessary for a complete description of the system. Light, for example, exhibits both wave and particle properties, but never both in the same experimental setup. Consciousness seems to display a similar complementarity. We can observe the contents of awareness, the thoughts, emotions, and sensations that arise and pass away, or we can rest as pure awareness itself, the witnessing presence that observes all content. But we cannot simultaneously analyze the contents of consciousness while resting as pure witnessing awareness. This complementarity in consciousness mirrors the wave-particle duality of quantum systems, suggesting structural similarities in how observation functions in both domains. While this doesn't prove that consciousness operates according to quantum principles, it provides an interesting framework for understanding the paradoxical nature of awareness that contemplatives have described for centuries. Research into what scientists call quantum coherence has revealed that quantum systems can maintain synchronized states across multiple components, creating unified behavior that transcends the properties of individual parts. Some researchers speculate that consciousness might involve similar coherence effects in neural systems, though this remains unproven. The meditation practice of choiceless awareness, where attention remains open to whatever arises without selecting or rejecting any particular experience, might be training this kind of coherent, non-selective observation. Instead of consciousness becoming entangled with specific mental objects, awareness remains coherently present to the entire field of experience. While we cannot claim that this meditative state literally involves quantum coherence in the brain, the functional similarities are intriguing. Both quantum coherence and choiceless awareness involve maintaining unified, non-interfering observation that doesn't collapse the system being observed into any particular state. As these parallels between contemplative practice and quantum mechanics continue to unfold in your awareness, take a breath and notice how they might be influencing your understanding of your own consciousness. The simple act of paying attention, which forms the foundation of all meditative practices, might be more scientifically fascinating than we've previously imagined. The quantum measurement problem, one of the deepest puzzles in physics, concerns how quantum superposition collapses into definite outcomes. Different interpretations propose various mechanisms, from conscious observation to environmental decoherence, but no consensus exists about what actually causes quantum collapse. Interestingly, contemplative traditions have grappled with a parallel mystery. How does the field of pure awareness give rise to specific experiences? How do thoughts, emotions, and sensations emerge from and dissolve back into the space of consciousness? Like quantum measurement, this transition from potential to actual in awareness remains mysterious despite millennia of investigation. Some interpretations suggest that meditation might be training our capacity to observe this process of manifestation in consciousness without interfering with it. Just as quantum physicists work to observe quantum systems without disturbing them, meditators learn to witness the arising and passing of experience without grasping or rejecting what appears. This parallel doesn't prove that consciousness operates according to quantum principles, but it suggests that contemplative practice might be developing observational skills that could provide insights into the nature of observation itself, whether in consciousness or in quantum systems. Recent neuroscience research has begun mapping the brain networks involved in self-referential thinking, the constant mental commentary that creates our sense of being a separate self. Advanced meditation practitioners show decreased activity in these networks, suggesting that contemplative practice might be training the capacity to operate from less self-referential modes of awareness. This shift away from self-referential processing might allow consciousness to function more like a quantum system, where information processing becomes less localized and more distributed. While this remains a speculative interpretation, it provides a framework for understanding how meditation might be training capacities that align with quantum principles. The practice of loving-kindness meditation, where practitioners cultivate feelings of compassion and goodwill toward all beings, has been shown to produce measurable changes in brain activity associated with empathy and emotional regulation. Some researchers speculate that this practice might be training forms of non-local awareness that transcend the normal boundaries of individual consciousness. While there's no scientific evidence that loving-kindness meditation creates literal non-locality in consciousness, the subjective experiences reported by practitioners often involve a profound sense of connection that seems to transcend physical boundaries. This might reflect changes in how the brain processes information about self and other, creating more inclusive and less boundaried forms of awareness. Take a gentle pause here and consider how these ideas might be appearing in your own experience of connection and compassion. Have you ever had moments where the sense of separation between yourself and others seemed to dissolve, where empathy or understanding arose spontaneously without effort? These experiences, while not proof of quantum effects in consciousness, point toward capacities that contemplative practice appears to cultivate and enhance. The quantum principle of superposition, where particles exist in multiple states simultaneously until measurement forces them to choose one outcome, finds interesting parallels in contemplative descriptions of consciousness. Before attention focuses on any particular mental object, awareness seems to exist in a state of open potential, present to all possibilities without being committed to any specific content. This state of open, unfocused awareness that meditation cultivates might share structural features with quantum superposition. While consciousness doesn't literally exist in multiple states simultaneously in the quantum sense, the phenomenology of open awareness suggests a mode of experiencing that transcends the either-or logic of classical thinking. Advanced practitioners often report that in deep meditative states, the normal categories of experience, inside and outside, self and other, subject and object, seem to dissolve into a more fundamental unity. While these reports don't constitute scientific evidence for quantum effects in consciousness, they describe experiences that echo quantum phenomena in fascinating ways. The practice of inquiry meditation, where practitioners investigate the nature of awareness itself, shares methodological similarities with quantum physics experiments. Just as physicists design careful experiments to probe the nature of quantum systems, contemplatives develop precise methods for investigating the nature of consciousness. Both approaches face the fundamental challenge of observation changing what's being observed. Quantum measurement inevitably disturbs quantum systems, while contemplative inquiry must work with the paradox that awareness cannot be observed as an object because it is the observing itself. This parallel suggests that both quantum physics and contemplative practice are probing aspects of reality that transcend the classical subject-object framework. While the domains are different, the methodological challenges are remarkably similar, pointing toward fundamental limits in how observational approaches can investigate the nature of reality itself. As you reflect on these connections between contemplative practice and quantum mechanics, notice how they might be enriching your understanding of both domains. The ancient practice of meditation might be more scientifically relevant than we've realized, while quantum mechanics might provide new frameworks for understanding the transformative potential of contemplative practice. Recent research into the neural mechanisms of meditation has identified specific changes in brain connectivity that accompany long-term contemplative practice. These changes suggest that meditation might be literally rewiring the nervous system in ways that enhance cognitive flexibility, emotional regulation, and attentional control. Some interpretations of this research propose that these neural changes might involve quantum effects in brain function, though this remains highly speculative. What's clear is that contemplative practice produces measurable alterations in brain structure and function that persist even when practitioners are not actively meditating. The quantum concept of decoherence, where quantum systems lose their coherent properties through interaction with the environment, provides an interesting framework for understanding how contemplative states might be disrupted by distraction and mental noise. Just as quantum coherence requires careful isolation from environmental interference, meditative states require similar protection from mental and emotional turbulence. This parallel suggests that contemplative practices might be training our capacity to maintain coherent states of consciousness even in the presence of potential disruptions. While this doesn't prove quantum coherence in the brain, it illustrates how quantum concepts might inform our understanding of contemplative training. The practice of mindful breathing, found in virtually every meditative tradition, involves sustaining attention on the subtle sensations of the breath, while allowing thoughts and distractions to arise and pass away without interference. This practice shares interesting parallels with quantum state preparation, where physicists must maintain delicate experimental conditions while minimizing environmental disturbance. Both approaches require what might be called effortless effort, a paradoxical combination of precise attention with non-interfering observation. This quality of engaged yet non-disturbing awareness might be training capacities that operate according to principles similar to those governing quantum measurement. As these parallels continue to unfold, take a moment to examine your own capacity for this kind of non-interfering observation. Can you maintain clear attention on your breathing right now while allowing other sensations and thoughts to arise and pass away naturally? This fundamental contemplative skill might be more scientifically interesting than it initially appears. The phenomenon of quantum entanglement has inspired various speculative theories about consciousness, though we must emphasize that no scientific consensus exists supporting literal quantum entanglement in human awareness. However, the mathematical frameworks used to describe entangled quantum systems provide interesting metaphors for understanding the interconnected nature of experience that contemplatives report. Some researchers have proposed that meditation might enhance sensitivity to subtle correlations and connections that normally remain below conscious awareness. While this doesn't involve literal quantum entanglement, it suggests that contemplative practice might expand the range of information that consciousness can access and integrate. The practice of open awareness meditation, where attention remains receptively present to whatever arises without focusing on any particular object, might be training this kind of expanded sensitivity. Instead of consciousness becoming narrowly focused on individual experiences, awareness remains open to the entire field of present moment experience. This open, receptive awareness that contemplatives cultivate might share functional similarities with quantum measurement approaches that seek to observe systems without disturbing their natural evolution. While consciousness and quantum systems operate in very different domains, the methodological parallels are thought-provoking. Recent advances in understanding quantum field theory have revealed that what we think of as empty space is actually filled with quantum fields that continuously create and destroy virtual particles. This quantum vacuum is not empty, but rather seethes with potential energy and information that remains largely invisible to classical observation. Contemplative traditions describe something remarkably similar when they point to the space of awareness itself. This space is not empty, but rather pregnant with potential, the source from which all experience arises and into which all experience dissolves. Like the quantum vacuum, the space of awareness appears empty from one perspective, but reveals extraordinary richness when observed with sufficient subtlety. This parallel between the quantum vacuum and the space of awareness provides new metaphors for understanding contemplative experiences, though we must emphasize that these remain no metaphorical comparisons rather than literal identifications. The language of quantum field theory offers fresh ways to describe aspects of consciousness that have been recognized by contemplatives for millennia. Take a gentle breath and notice the space of awareness in which your current experience is arising. Can you sense the aware presence that remains constant, even as thoughts, sensations, and emotions come and go? This space of consciousness that meditation reveals might share structural features with the quantum vacuum that underlies physical reality. The principle of quantum complementarity suggests that complete knowledge of quantum systems requires acknowledging multiple, seemingly contradictory perspectives that cannot be unified into a single classical description. Similarly, complete understanding of consciousness might require integrating contemplative, neuroscientific, and phenomenological perspectives that each reveal different aspects of awareness. This complementarity in approaches to consciousness mirrors the complementarity that quantum mechanics reveals in physical systems. Just as light requires both wave and particle descriptions depending on the experimental context, consciousness might require both first-person, contemplative, and third-person scientific approaches for complete understanding. The integration of contemplative practice with scientific investigation might be revealing this complementarity in consciousness research. Neither purely subjective contemplative reports nor purely objective neuroscientific measurements alone provide complete understanding, but their combination offers richer insights than either approach could achieve independently. As you contemplate these ideas, notice how your own understanding of consciousness might be enriched by considering both the subjective experience of awareness and the objective findings of neuroscience. This integration of perspectives might be revealing complementary aspects of consciousness that neither approach alone could fully capture. The quantum measurement problem has puzzled physicists for decades since its discovery, suggesting that observation plays a fundamental role in determining physical reality that we still don't fully understand. Similarly, the role of awareness in determining experienced reality remains mysterious despite millennia of contemplative investigation. Both quantum measurement and conscious observation seem to involve transitions from potential to actual, from superposition to definite states, from the unmanifest to the manifest. While these transitions occur in very different domains, their structural similarities suggest deep principles that might operate across multiple levels of reality. Some interpretations propose that consciousness and quantum mechanics might be related not because consciousness causes quantum effects, but because both reflect deeper principles of how observation and reality interact. This speculative possibility remains unproven, but it offers frameworks for understanding both domains that transcend classical mechanistic approaches. Recent research into altered states of consciousness has documented profound changes in brain activity during deep meditative states, including alterations in the neural networks responsible for self-referential thinking and the sense of being a separate self. These findings suggest that contemplative practice might be revealing aspects of consciousness that transcend ordinary ego-based awareness. Some interpretations of this research propose that these altered states might involve changes in how the brain processes quantum information, though this remains highly speculative. What's clear is that meditation can induce profound shifts in consciousness that challenge our normal understanding of what awareness can become. The phenomenology of these altered states often includes reports of unity consciousness, where the normal boundaries between self and world dissolve into a more fundamental awareness. While these experiences don't prove quantum effects in consciousness, they point toward capacities that contemplative practice can reveal and cultivate. As we approach the culmination of this exploration, take a moment to reflect on how these connections between contemplative practice and quantum mechanics might be appearing in your own understanding. Whether or not consciousness literally operates according to quantum principles. The structural parallels we've examined offer rich frameworks for understanding both the transformative potential of meditation and the mysterious nature of awareness itself. The journey through these quantum contemplative parallels reminds us that both domains are probing aspects of reality that transcend classical mechanistic understanding. While contemplative practice and quantum mechanics operate in very different realms, their convergence points toward possibilities for understanding consciousness that neither approach alone could achieve. These parallels remain largely speculative rather than scientifically established, but they illustrate how ancient contemplative wisdom and cutting-edge physics might be revealing complementary aspects of a reality far more mysterious and interconnected than our everyday thinking suggests. The practice of meditation, viewed through the lens of quantum concepts, appears as a sophisticated investigation into the nature of observation, reality, and consciousness itself. Whether or not these connections prove to be literally true, exploring them enriches our appreciation for both the scientific mystery of quantum mechanics and the transformative potential of contemplative practice. They remind us that consciousness itself might be far more fundamental to the nature of reality than our materialist assumptions typically acknowledge. As these ideas settle into your awareness, notice how they might be shifting your relationship with your own contemplative experience, if you have one. The simple act of paying attention, of observing the arising and passing of thoughts and sensations, might be participating in processes that echo the fundamental dynamics of quantum reality itself. While this remains a speculative possibility rather than proven fact, it suggests that meditation might be far more scientifically relevant than we've previously imagined. Recent investigations into what researchers call quantum biology continue to reveal quantum effects operating in biological systems at scales much larger than previously thought possible. These discoveries suggest that the boundary between quantum and classical physics might be far more permeable in living systems than our textbooks typically indicate. If consciousness emerges from biological processes that already exploit quantum phenomena, then contemplative practices might be training our natural capacity to access and work with these quantum aspects of our own neurobiology. Take a gentle breath here and consider how this perspective might influence your understanding of human potential itself. If contemplative practices are indeed training capacities that align with quantum principles, then the transformative effects that advanced practitioners report might reflect genuine expansions of what consciousness can become. The dissolution of subject-object boundaries, the direct perception of interconnectedness, the experience of pure awareness beyond conceptual elaboration, All of these might represent natural capacities that meditation helps to reveal and stabilize. The practice of what contemplatives call pure awareness, or rigpa in Tibetan Buddhism, shares remarkable parallels with quantum measurement approaches that seek to observe systems without collapsing them into definite states. This pure awareness remains present whatever arises without becoming identified with any particular content, much as quantum measurement seeks to gather information without forcing systems into classical behavior. While consciousness and quantum systems operate in vastly different domains, this functional similarity suggests that contemplative practice might be training observational capacities that operate according to principles similar to those governing quantum measurement. The meditator learns to maintain clear awareness without interfering with the natural flow of experience, just as quantum physicists work to observe quantum phenomena without destroying their quantum properties. Some interpretations of recent neuroscience research suggest that advanced contemplative practitioners show increased activity in brain regions associated with what's called metacognitive awareness, the capacity to observe one's own mental processes without becoming caught up in their content. This enhanced metacognitive capacity might represent a form of consciousness that operates more like quantum measurement, maintaining coherent observation without collapsing experience into rigid conceptual categories. The phenomenon of neuroplasticity, the brain's capacity to reorganize itself throughout life in response to experience, provides a biological foundation for understanding how contemplative practice might literally reshape the neural substrate of consciousness. Research has documented structural changes in the brains of long-term meditators, including increased cortical thickness in areas associated with attention and sensory processing, and decreased activity in regions associated with self-referential thinking. These neural changes suggest that meditation might be training the brain to function in ways that align more closely with quantum principles of coherent, distributed information processing. While this remains speculative, the measurable alterations in brain structure and function that accompany contemplative practice indicate that these parallels with quantum mechanics might reflect genuine changes in how consciousness operates. As you reflect on these possibilities, notice how your own awareness might be functioning right now. Is there a sense of spacious presence that remains constant, even as thoughts and sensations arise and pass away? This background awareness that contemplatives learn to recognize and rest in might represent an aspect of consciousness that operates according to principles more subtle than classical mechanistic models can accommodate. The quantum principle of non-locality, where entangled particles remain correlated across arbitrary distances, has inspired various speculative theories about consciousness, though we must emphasize that no scientific consensus exists supporting literal non-locality in human awareness. However, contemplative traditions across cultures report experiences of expanded awareness that seem to transcend normal spatial and temporal boundaries. These reports don't constitute scientific evidence for non-local consciousness, but they point towards subjective experiences that challenge our normal understanding of how awareness can function. The sense of connection with distant people or places, the spontaneous arising of information that seems to come from beyond individual memory, the feeling of participating in a larger field of consciousness. All of these experiences that contemplatives report might reflect natural capacities that meditation helps to reveal. The recent research into what scientists call extended mind theories suggests that consciousness might not be confined to the boundaries of individual brains, but might extend into the environment through our interactions with tools, technologies, and other people. While these theories don't invoke quantum mechanics, they point toward understanding consciousness as a more distributed and interconnected phenomenon than our usual assumptions suggest. The practice of compassion meditation, where practitioners cultivate feelings of loving kindness toward all beings, has been shown to produce measurable changes in brain activity and stress hormones that persist beyond the meditation session itself. Some interpretations suggest that this practice might be training forms of awareness that naturally extend beyond the boundaries of individual self-concern. While there's no scientific evidence that compassion meditation creates literal connections with other beings, the subjective experiences reported by practitioners often involve a profound sense of interconnectedness that seems to transcend physical boundaries. This might reflect changes in how the brain processes information about self and other, creating more inclusive and less boundaried forms of consciousness. Take a moment to examine your own capacity for empathy and connection right now. As you consider the idea of consciousness as potentially more interconnected than we typically imagine, do you sense any shift in how you relate to the world around you? This capacity for expanded empathy that contemplative practice cultivates might represent a natural expression of consciousness that transcends the classical boundaries between separate minds. The quantum concept of decoherence, where quantum systems lose their coherent properties through interaction with environmental noise, provides an interesting framework for understanding how contemplative states might be disrupted by mental and emotional turbulence. Just as quantum coherence requires careful isolation from environmental interference, meditative awareness requires similar protection from the noise of thoughts, emotions, and sensory distractions. This parallel suggests that contemplative practices might be training our capacity to maintain coherent states of consciousness, even in the presence of potential disruptions. The ability to remain centered and clear even during challenging circumstances, which meditation is famous for developing, might reflect this kind of trained coherence in consciousness. Advanced practitioners often describe the capacity to remain undisturbed by difficult emotions or challenging circumstances, not through suppression or avoidance, but through a kind of transparent awareness that allows experiences to arise and pass away without losing its essential clarity. This might represent a form of consciousness that maintains coherence, similar to how quantum systems can remain in superposition despite environmental influences. The practice of insight meditation, where practitioners investigate the nature of experience itself, shares methodological parallels with quantum physics experiments that probe the fundamental nature of reality. Both approaches must work with the paradox that observation inevitably changes what's being observed, requiring increasingly subtle and non-interfering methods of investigation. As we come to the gentle close of this exploration into the mysterious parallels between quantum mechanics and contemplative awareness, take a moment to rest in the profound questions we've uncovered together. While these connections remain largely speculative rather than scientifically established, they illuminate something extraordinary about both domains. Each is probing aspects of reality that transcend our everyday mechanistic understanding of how the universe operates. The structural similarities we've discovered between quantum phenomena and meditative states don't prove that consciousness literally operates according to quantum principles, but they do suggest that ancient contemplative practices might be far more scientifically relevant than we've previously imagined. Whether through the non-interfering observation that both quantum measurement and mindfulness require, or the coherent awareness that meditation cultivates and quantum systems naturally exhibit, these parallels point toward deeper principles that may operate across multiple levels of reality. Perhaps most remarkably, both quantum physics and contemplative practice reveal that the act of observation itself plays a fundamental role in determining what becomes real. This isn't to claim that thoughts create reality through quantum effects, but rather to recognize that awareness and the structure of reality appear to be intimately connected in ways we're still discovering. As you carry these ideas forward into your own contemplative practice, or simply into your daily experience of being conscious, remember that the simple act of paying attention might be more extraordinary than it initially appears. In a universe where quantum coherence and conscious awareness both seem to transcend the classical boundaries of space and time, the ancient invitation to simply be present takes on new dimensions of wonder and possibility. If you found yourself intrigued by these connections between consciousness and the fundamental structure of reality, you'll be fascinated by evidence suggesting that your awareness might be navigating between different versions of reality in ways you've never noticed. Those subtle shifts in familiar details, the strange sense that something has quietly changed about the world around you, the eerie feeling that reality itself has been gently rearranged overnight, all point toward possibilities that challenge everything we think we know about the stability of existence itself. Join me next as we explore U-switched timelines this morning, parallel universe, and Mandela effect theory, where we'll investigate how your consciousness might already be experiencing the quantum multiverse in the most ordinary moments of daily life.